are the Pacers maximizing their lineups right now when it comes to the future and the present? It's very hard to think of the right answers. Plus, there's actually been trade rumors about this team already and some speculation and some transactions that are guaranteed to happen kind of soon. We're talking about it all right now on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today, the Pacers play a game. We'll talk about that tomorrow, but today I want to talk about all sorts of things, something I've been thinking about when it comes to the Pacers and the lineups they're putting on the floor. What does and doesn't make sense? How should they handle this? What should Rick Carlisle's goals be when putting five-man combinations on the floor? I want to talk about transactions that might be coming soon or will be coming soon, or stuff that you just need to keep an eye on. And a comment I keep getting about Pascal Siakam that's driving me crazy. And then at the end, Anthony Davis, Jose Alvarado. Yes, those names are both coming up. And the trade market. First glance. For now, probably won't talk about trades very often until December 15th, but for now, we will, because there's been actual credible reporting about it. Okay, let's start with lineups, though, because this is very prevalent to the Pacers' early season situation, and they just played a game. Ben Mathurin is back. He's in the starting five. They have, Nembhard, Mathurin, and Siakam out there together. Isaiah Jackson started. We'll see if that continues or if they go back to Tony Bradley. Jarris Walker's been starting. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is. But what really got me thinking is if you look at the Pacers' on-off numbers for every player, the best guys and the guys who have played with Pascal Siakam the most is a very strong correlation, right? Of the people who have played more than 3 games, the best Pacers on-offs are Aaron Nesmith, Siakam himself, Jarris Walker, Isaiah Jackson. That's the top 4. That was the Pacers' starting or 4 starting guys for a long time. 5th is Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. And then 6th, but only has played 3 games, so it doesn't count, is Ben Mathurin. Everybody else is negative, right? So clearly there's a strong correlation between plays a lot with Siakam and on-offs. Andrew Nembhard, ironically, is the only one who doesn't fit that bill because he is very often one of the starters that stays on the floor when Siakam has come off in these recent games. And Andrew Nembhard also joined the lineup when the Pacers have just been playing completely god-awful. The only guy that I would say kind of pokes through this thought is Ben Sheppard, who has just a completely dreadful on-off and has played very poorly this season. And this got me thinking. So obviously, if you're the Pacers, if you're building the best way to win right this second, your best lineup either does one of 2 things. It's your best 5 players that fit, or it's the guys that make Siakam the best. And I think that what they were doing and kind of have been doing, right, with this Robinson-Earl's in there, Walker's in there with Nesmith hurt, Mathurin, Nembhard considerations, and center, which has been Tony Bradley. To be more specific, when they went to Robinson-Earl and Bradley, I thought, okay, they are going with the most consistent 5 players. For a team that's had a lot of guys, basically every player on the team, be really wobbly, right? A lot of inconsistent play, a lot of guys in and out for injuries. Like you expect some inconsistency from them. Those are the guys who have given them the most, what you're getting from them play. But it may not be the actually best fitting 5 around specifically Siakam. And I'll get to why I'm centering on Siakam in a second. But if you were specifically being let's make life as easy as on Pascal Siakam as possible, that lineup would probably have Jay Huff, honestly, the best shooter of the centers, even though he hasn't shot it particularly well. That lineup would certainly have Nembhard, certainly have Mathurin, and would probably have who else can shoot it pretty well? Sheppard, I guess he hasn't made anything. No, I mean, no one has made shots at all. Just on perception, probably Sheppard or Talon Peter, right? But that doesn't make sense. That lineup's not going to play together that much on the when the Pacers are good again, and that is what the actual thing I've been ping-ponging around in my head is when Nesmith got hurt, I said I would start Jarris Walker in his place, even though it's plausible they would start Ben Sheppard and go with Nembhard, Sheppard, Robinson-Earl, and that was pre-Mathurin. I think they should have started Jarris because they need, 1, he logically fit the position, but 2, they need to see Jarris Walker in these situations. Jarris Walker with Nembhard, Jarris Walker with Siakam, Jarris Walker against the best players, Jarris Walker in more meaningful situations. That has happened. Mathurin's now back, and they put Robinson on the bench. And that was the first time it was that game in Detroit. Now, granted, we'll see what they do at starting center going forward because they have now done James Wiseman starting where he played college ball and did a little bit of growing up. Isaiah Jackson starting where he did a little bit of growing up in Michigan, right? That's clearly a thing. We'll see if they go back to Tony Bradley on Wednesday. But the group they went with Wednesday, granted, this was also a good lineup, was Siakam, young dudes, guys that could/should in some cases figure for the Pacers' future beyond this season, and Pascal Siakam. And to me, that was like, okay, that actually makes good sense for basically any path the Pacers want to go down. So I understand starting Tony Bradley. If they keep going with him, I get it. He has been their most effective by consistency center this season. Jackson's had certainly higher peaks. But if they're thinking about the future, even if that lineup actually is good too, they should keep doing what they did in Detroit. I think that Walker, Mathurin, Nembhard, Siakam, and Jackson should continue to start on that basis. However, the other part of this is how many games in a row, 5, 4, 6, pick your number when you want to pick your cutoff for this. Has the discussion been about this team? Starters do well as soon as they make a sub. It really doesn't even matter who the sub is. Any sixth player comes in for one of the starters, and the team immediately nosedives in whatever progress they've made, just completely goes away. And that is also reflected in the on-off numbers. TJ McConnell's on-off, this is Basketball Reference, so it's estimated, is minus 40.5 points per 100 possessions in 100 minutes, granted. Shepard's is terrible. Nembhard's is terrible. Peters is terrible. Martin's is terrible. McClung, Morris, Dennis, all bad. Tony Bradley's is about even. Good for him, right? The bench has been just dreadful, and any combination of those guys, even with some starters, has not been good. And that's the other part of this consideration. Does it make sense to mix and match and split your best players if it means you're not getting completely pantsed and embarrassed, but if it comes at the sacrifice of either making life as easy on Pascal Siakam as possible, or Ben Mathurin, or whoever is going to be the Pacers' leader on offense, or takes away from their long-term vision for the team, what is actually worth it to balance it? Because that's why I after the Detroit game, I said I found it noteworthy that there was a good stretch of McConnell, Mathurin minutes with the bench. Give Mathurin chances to really be the lead ball handler. Nembhard was on the floor. I don't think Siakam was on the floor at that time. Right? That's a big moment for Mathurin and lets him help those units in a way that no one else really has been able to this year. So that's a smart way to do it. They always use Siakam with the bench. He's a 3-stint player, which is rare for a star. I've talked about that forever, right? How should they properly do that? Is there a way to get, that group, Mathurin and Siakam, with bench players on the floor? Is that honestly a case for having Tony Bradley go to the bench, is to have more stable center play with the second unit? Is there a way to get Nembhard at the 2 in with the bench groups and cut some of Ben Shepherd's minutes? But again, he's been awful this year. Nothing good to say about his play. But he was their 8th most minutes last season and played and shot and played well in the playoffs. Like, they know what he is. Is that something they'd consider? And so that's the final balancing point that I think is interesting. So what I think is key for the Pacers and something to keep an eye on for them across the next few games is they get a little healthier and have a little more scoring punch with Mathurin back, but are still completely floundering in the standings, is how do they start to piece together that puzzle? Do they finally start to, and I don't mean finally as like they should have been doing this all along, but just like, look, their goals have to change at some point. Do they finally start to like mix and match in a different way to keep their bench afloat? But if they do that, which I think they should be doing a little bit, at what expense does it come from for their starting 5? Because they have so many crossed around goals of who should start, what makes sense. If you're getting pummeled by 15 points per game, you're not learning anything or winning. I guess you're learning what just like getting embarrassed looks like, but they don't want that, right? So how do they maximize their young guys, split their best players up in the most effective way, still figure out what rocks with Siakam? Because, like, let's face it, that is also, like, we could talk about player development, but learning what rocks around Pascal Siakam, even without Haliburton on the floor, is still valuable to know for a future season, right? Putting all those pieces together to build a rotation is not very easy. But to me, I think the things that I am immediately keeping an eye on in that regard, as the Pacers kind of go forward into having Mathurin back in the lineup, is I think they should start the group that just started in Detroit again. And I know that changing the starting 5 a bunch has kind of been challenging for them. And I think that they should try to have Mathurin or Nembhard also overlap with Siakam on those bench groups until McConnell can really get going and up to speed. And then they'll have more that's hard, but that's 3 players to keep 2 on the floor at all times. It's doable. That stagger, I think, would go a long way in lineup cohesion, in success, and in accomplishing as many goals as possible for the Pacers. That is my right strategy. We'll see what the Pacers decide to do. And speaking of things the Pacers will have to decide to do, transactions are coming. An expiring contract soon. What should they do with that? Are they going to get another hardship? I want to answer a question I keep getting about Siakam that I think is super dumb. Another Ben Mathurin comment I keep getting that I think is super dumb. We'll get to all that right now on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, I have to tell you about 2 wonderful groups of people. First up is Skims. When Skims announced they're making underwear for men, the reaction made perfect sense. People have been talking about Skims Comfort for years. I now have 7 pairs of Skims. Most guys stick with what they've been buying since college. The same fits, same waistbands that roll. They settle. Skims Men's changes that. One upgrade, it's obvious why everybody has been talking about them. When I tried them, I get hype immediately. The design feels good. It fits right. It stays put. No slippage, no sagging, no adjusting. Just great underwear. Makes you feel confident and comfortable. I have 2 different types of pairs, but I really love the cotton 3-inch, and I have the stretch 3-inch briefs. They fit well. The fabric's nice. It's soft. It's supportive. They don't ride up. They don't lose their shape. Whether you're working, traveling like me up to Detroit, working out, just hanging out at home, they feel better than anything you've worn before. If you don't expect underwear to be a game changer, Skims will surprise you. So shop Skims Men's right now at skims.com. When you place your order, choose podcast in the post-purchase survey and select this podcast from the drop-down menu to let them know we sent you. Let's also talk about FanDuel very quickly. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, you just want to ride the hot hand, whatever. FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Lakers. LeBron is back. And he's scoring a little bit, and that's 23 frickin' NBA seasons. That's ridiculous. LeBron overlapped with Reggie. Like, it's insane. His longevity is just crazy. The Lakers beat the Jazz. Lockdown Lakers will have more on that. And I want you to contextualize 23 NBA seasons for one player. Most of anybody officially for LeBron. Okay, we're talking all transactions the rest of the way today, so congrats to all you people that love talking about trades and transactions less than 20 games into a season. You are the winners today. First up is something that's going to happen or going to require discussion this week. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who has played well for the Pacers, right? Maybe a little overstated for me, but I've quite liked what he's been able to do for the Pacers so far. Earned the starts he got. Almost 21 minutes a game. He has the same issue as everybody else. He can't make anything. He's shooting 36% from the field, but 7 boards a game speaks for itself. Doesn't turn it over that much. His defense is just kind of fine, but fine is good for this team. He's a good player. His current 10-day hardship expires on after Thursday, so through the 20th. So he'll be available for the Hornets game. That's tonight. And then he, as of right this second, would not be available for their Friday game in Cleveland. However, let's talk about 2 things. One is Aaron Nesmith is going to miss his 3rd game after the Charlotte game, meaning he will contribute to the Pacers' ability to sign a hardship player. So at that point, I'll be curious if Nesmith, Toppin, and Haliburton, we know on Wednesday, will all be out for 2 more weeks after Wednesday. So one, if the Pacers are eligible to sign a hardship contract after Wednesday, that means one of Cam Jones or Johnny Furphy is still projected to be out for 2 more weeks. The second thing is it's possible if both Furphy and Jones are going to be out for 2 more weeks beyond Wednesday, beyond the 19th, that the Pacers could be eligible for 2 hardship contracts. So keep an eye on that. They could be able to re-sign Robinson-Earl. I don't know if there's a limit to 10-day hardships the same way there is for 10 days. It's a difference in where the document is that has the rules. I would assume that it's if it's only 2 10 days like it is for standard 10 days where you have to sign a standard deal, that could actually be a limiting factor for Robinson-Earl. I'll have to check on that. So keep an eye on that, the Pacers' ability to have a hardship and who they would or could bring in and what that could mean for player availability and player health, but we'll know pretty soon. We keep learning about player timelines more specifically through these hardships. So that's a transaction that you're going to learn about on Thursday or Friday is if they can keep Jeremiah Robinson-Earl and all that kind of stuff. Now let's talk about the other part. Let's pretend Jeremiah Robinson-Earl either can't sign another 10-day or Cam Jones and Furphy are approaching returning, which we don't know, and then they aren't eligible for a hardship at all. Well, let's talk about this. Is there another way they could sign Jeremiah Robinson-Earl? He's been good. He's been in their rotation and deservedly so. Yes, there is. They have a non-guaranteed contract of Monte Morris on this team. And their other non-guaranteed contract is Tony Bradley, who's in their rotation also. He's good or has been decent for them. Morris, I thought they needed a point guard. That transaction made sense to me. I said in the offseason, I thought Monte Morris made sense for the Pacers team, right? I've had a long time belief that he would add some value to what they're doing. He hasn't been needed very much, right? They signed him. He plays in Denver. He plays in Golden State. And McConnell comes back in Utah. And Nembhard comes back in Denver. And all of a sudden his minutes are just like basically gone. And they haven't gone to very many 2-point guard units. And now Mathurin's back in the backcourt as well. Their need for Morris is smaller. I wonder if they would try to keep him until like one of like Quentin Jackson's potentially back, for example. By the way, two-way players don't count towards hardships, which is why I didn't talk about him in the injury section just a second ago. But I would wonder if the Pacers would consider waiving Monte Morris to sign Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. The reason being, he's just straight up and better, right? I thought they needed a point guard when they signed Morris. I thought that move made sense. I would have done that if I were running the Pacers. But now they don't need him as much. They have health in front of him, and he hasn't done. He hasn't been like bad or anything, but he hasn't actually provided a ton of value in a way that you maybe hoped if you're the Pacers. But I think they also would hope that they could play him in more meaningful roles to actually explore this and play him in 2-point guard lineups where he's more of a setup guy with good players. And that's the part that I've had trouble with when it's coming to evaluating Monte Morris. The type of player he is, that low mistakes guy, gets you into your offense, organizes stuff. Like, he defended well in Golden State. He's had some okay statistical games, but he would be better paired with other good players. And their current rotation does not really allow him to play with the Pacers' best players. So it's hard to evaluate what he actually is and could be, but just keep an eye on those two guys, Robinson, Earl Morris, 10-day hardships and all that. Okay, two things I keep getting comments about that are driving me crazy, not because they're wrong or stupid or anything, but just I'm seeing them a lot. Okay, one is Mathurin's balling, 29 points a game. He's playing awesome. This is exactly why he shouldn't have wanted what would have been a reasonable extension for him this summer. Is if he does this for the whole season, he's going to get paid way more, and that's great for him. And people keep saying, oh, the Pacers need to pay him. They can't lose him for nothing. One, they can't pay him right now. They cannot. No one can pay Ben Mathurin anything until July 1st. Okay? If you're just saying pay him because you want him to get paid, great. They should. If he keeps playing this well, they should pay him. This is very simple. He'll be a restricted free agent. If he's awesome, they can match any offer and they'll keep him. And everybody will say, why did they do this last year? Because Ben Mathurin wouldn't have done it last year. So that one's driving me crazy because they can't do it. And if he keeps playing this well, they're going to pay him. So just keep that in mind. If he keeps playing like this, they should keep him. They should pay him absolutely what he's worth. They are not allowed to until July. Ben Mathurin earning all the praise he is getting and all the dollars that would be coming his way as a result through, of course, caveat required, it's been 3 games, but he's been exceptionally good in many parts of those 3 games. The other thing I have heard or been asked that's just like, is about, would they trade Pascal Siakam if this season goes so terrible? Or like one person who's a fan of another team coming in there and being like, oh, we should trade for Siakam. Are you interested in this thing? Dude, no, what? That is something I think everybody needs to kind of process as the trade deadline approaches for the Pacers. Naturally, a team in their situation, bad record, is going to be like, well, everybody's going to, from the outside, is going to point to them and go, well, that's a seller right there. They're selling. They should sell parts. And there will be some things worth selling for the Pacers. We'll talk about that in more detail when it's more clear exactly what their situation is. They should not be thought of like that. They should be thought of as optimizing their roster for a Tyrese Haliburton team the following season. And the best possible thing you could have for that team is Pascal Siakam. Trading him away makes no sense. It makes the team that will be good in 2 years from now, or a season from now, whatever, much worse. They have 2 more seasons of those 2 under contract together. Siakam's extension eligible after the season. No, they shouldn't trade Pascal. They shouldn't even humor it. That would make no sense for them and their long-term building unless they're getting a better player than Siakam. And that's buying. That's not selling. No, they should not be listening to trades or thinking, no, what? That doesn't make any sense. And that's going to be the case for a lot of their good players. Toppin, any starter from last year. Like, no, they just shouldn't. That's not something they should humor. If it makes their team better when Haliburton is back, then that player should be on the team for when Haliburton does return. Okay. Some external guys that have been connected to the Pacers, some via reporting, some just via basal speculation. I want to talk about both of them and provide my thoughts. Jose Alvarado and, yes, a stud, Anthony Davis. That's coming up to finish up today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, you need to talk about Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's sad. Software is a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform from global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. They remove the bottlenecks and the busy work that slows teams down. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically, perfectly in sync. It's simple to use. It gives companies one source of truth for their people data and everything they touch. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill the gaps with your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now, you can get 6 months free. How about that? When you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNBA, learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNBA for 6 months free. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day, or second listen, Locked On Mavs. We're about to talk about the Mavs and Anthony Davis, and they are not playing well. And Nick Angstad has been all over this thing this season where he says, here's what the Mavs record is. Here's the team. How many teams have made the playoffs since 2000 that have started with that record or worse? And it is a very, very small percentage. And that's relevant to the Pacers as well, which is one reason that I've been interested in it. But two, the Mavs are just an interesting, fascinating team. Nico Harrison has been fired. That has naturally led to speculation about Anthony Davis and his future. And we will get to that in just a second. Nico Harrison got fired. Had to be fired. Crazy trade. Makes no sense. I reach out to people I know in the league, and I'm not going to pretend to be the most connected person of all time, but from all corners of the NBA with like a, what? Like, what do you think of this? And like basically everybody's like, yeah, it's stunning. Like, it's crazy. It's insane. Everybody thinks the same thing. It just makes no sense. So my only question about this whole thing, it's over now. Nico Harrison got fired. Dumbest trade. I can't believe, like, people always like, oh, I saw a graphic on Reddit. Paul George trade. I was like, is this the worst trade ever? No, the Luka trade is. Like, at the time of the Paul George trade, it was defensible. People got why the Clippers did it, right? No one understood why they traded Luka, and nobody ever will. Look, Nico, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about the Mavs inner workings. Maybe I'm a sucker, but like, one guy does not make a trade in the NBA. Many people do. And it's, Nico Harrison. People have talked about Patrick Dumont. Jason Kidd claims he didn't know. I am skeptical of that. Some reporting since has suggested he did. Like, that's my only question about this now that it's over. And I promise I'll talk about the Pacers in a second. It's just like, I still obviously think it was an unbelievably stupid trade. My question is how it got to a point where multiple people with the Mavs were like, you know what? Yeah, let's trade Luka. Like, what? How did those many people get on the same page? Like, what actually happened in the dynamic there that made the practical, obvious decision shift away from what they did? That's the only thing I wonder now that this is all over. Okay, let's talk about this because Anthony Davis, he should be on the trade block for Dallas. And I listened to some of my podcast rounds after Nico Harrison got fired, and I believe the first two I heard it on were Dunked On and the Zach Lowe show that were running through potential Anthony Davis teams, and both of them were like, oh, maybe the Pacers. And then both of them landed on the same conclusion that I'm about to with you, which is, okay, one, Anthony Davis's whole career has been about one positional thing, and that is that he is should be a natural center and just doesn't want to do that. He wants to play 4 next to another big. He would be awesome as the 5 for the Pacers next to Siakam. But if that is not something he's interested in, that's obviously a big hurdle here because he's extension eligible next summer, right? So you got to commit to Anthony Davis if you're going to trade for him. You don't have to extend him, but then you lose a lot of some of the value there. He's a stud. I think Anthony Davis is just an awesome player. He's a beast on defense. His offense is underrated, albeit limited because of his lack of jumper. Like, he's a monster, right? When he's actually out on the floor. So he would help the Pacers tremendously with a lot of things. The other problem, though, and the reason I think a lot of people were like, oh, this probably wouldn't work for the Pacers and just kind of glossed over it very quickly, is Anthony Davis makes a lot of money. His contract is huge. And that is something I've talked about, that with Miles Turner no longer on the Pacers, and no mid-sized contract really on the books for this team, right? They go from the max contracts of Siakam and Haliburton down to Nembhard at $18 million. Trading for a guy like Anthony Davis becomes very hard for the Pacers, right? His current contract is 3 years, like $175 million, but he's in the first year of it. He's at $54 million. For the Pacers to trade to match for that, they'd have to trade like 4 rotation players, like Toppin, Nesmith, McConnell, or some probably even more. I mean, I'm just making up salaries. I'm not even saying what an offer would even be. And so that's where it gets hard, is they're gutting so much of their team to actually do it, that the other question would then become, well, just do Siakam for Davis. And it's like, well, then you're not defeating the purpose, but you're changing the purpose tremendously of what that trade would actually look like. So yeah, Anthony Davis is awesome. If he's somehow available to the Pacers, they should of course pursue the avenues it would take to get him, but their financial situation, including how close they are to the luxury tax for an awful team right now, and their future spending and things of that nature, make it a very complicated trade, let's say, that makes it quite challenging, even though, man, is that dude good. Anthony Davis can ball. So if this becomes a thing, I'll actually dive into it in more detail of like what a legal trade would be and what the Pacers could do under the tax and like what the Mavs would actually consider. But keep in mind, you're going to hear this a lot from me, so I might as well do it now with the first speculated player. I heard no one even connected them with any real reporting, right? They were just having fun. But Anthony Davis to the Pacers, like many trades for a high salary good player, would be challenging for this Pacers team without gutting a lot of their team. The real target that was actually reported, this was interesting, and I'd be curious when the timing of this was. Jake Fisher in the Steinline reported the following. I will just read the paragraph. Quote, as Indiana looked for point guard help while coping without Tyrese Haliburton for the season in the wake of Haliburton's Achilles tear, sources say another name to monitor for the Pacers is New Orleans guard Jose Alvarado. Fisher is told Indiana has kept the defensive pest on its radar throughout this early stretch of the season. Should be noted that came out on November 13th, so 6 days prior to the release of this podcast, before they played Phoenix. I'd be curious where that he officially learned that between then and that Denver game, which was 5 days before this report came out. Was this like they want him to play all the time? Was this a quick, we're desperate for point guards after the Nembhard injury exploration? Like, when did this contact with the Pelicans actually start? I mean, Alvarado's a solid player who makes very little money. Like, that's a very helpful thing for the Pacers in their current kind of state of existence, right? Because they are, not expensive, but a higher salary team in the league with, not high, but, in the middle pack, I suppose, of the salaries of the teams in the league, and they needed point guard help badly. And Alvarado makes $4.5 million this year, and then I believe $4.5 million on a player option next year. Like, you can fit that in, easy peasy, dust your hands off, call it a day. Except it's not quite that simple. With him, if you're a good player on a cheap contract on a 1+1, yeah, like that's worth exploring, especially if it's at a position of need. He is very pesky on defense. His offense is very limited. Like, he is a 41% for his career. Sure, on this Pacers team, I'm sure that would stand out quite a bit, but very telling they were already looking external, right? That's very rare early in the season. They made that Thomas Bryant trade last year on the first day they could in a desperate situation. They needed a center, and they kept signing guys, and it wasn't working, so they made a trade. Like, that was already apparently said that they were exploring with Alvarado. That is more telling to me, is they were that hurt that they explored the external market, because no team wants to give up assets early in the season if they don't have to. They'd rather just sign guys like the Pacers have to non-guaranteed deals and see what works and see what doesn't. And having hardship contracts has helped to make that all more possible. But again, I always say this, keep stuff in mind. Sometimes stuff that pops up in the past becomes relevant again in the future. Jose Alvarado is a decent player. His style would certainly fit the way the Pacers play. The Pelicans' direction, of course, makes it plausible that they would trade somebody who could be a free agent in the following summer. He's only 27. It's just keep an eye on this. I have no idea if I would personally trade for Jose Alvarado. I'd have to know what the package is, but at his salary, basically any trade is simple to make. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening today. Let me know what you think of any trade target for the Pacers at this point. I don't think, unless there's any more reporting, we'll talk about trades again until probably the NBA Cup break right before December 15th. Tomorrow, we're talking Pacers Hornets, what the Pacers did or didn't do. Friday, we'll have a guest, TBD on who that actually is, talking about this season so far and things of that nature. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking more about the Indiana Pacers. Till then, everybody, see you very soon.